Well, Jack, I'm Charlie Collins and Eileen, and today we're going to do your oral history. And
There.
we're going to try to do both of you, and we'll see how that works.
Good.
Jack, let's start out by you giving me your full name, where and when you were born.
My name is Jack William Cooley. I was born in Rockwood, Michigan on October the 19th, 1924.
That's pretty good. And Eileen?
My name is Eileen Cooley. Eileen, you want my married name?
Well, let's start.
Yeah, Eileen Cooley. And I was born in Interlaken, Michigan.
The music place.
Yeah, May the 15th, 1924.
1924. And what was your maiden name, Eileen?
Corby, K-O-R-B-I.
That's a different one, isn't it? Yeah.
Finnish. My father
Okay.
came from Finland.
Okay, well, we're going to try to spend a little bit of time with both of you here as we talk. And Eileen, we will be going right through from when you were born and try to talk about your different schoolings and so on, and your parents, your children, and that type of thing, as well as Jack's service in the Army. So, Jack, let's get down to the nitty gritty here and find out what you did before you went to grade school.
Before I went to grade school, man, well, I went to kindergarten and through the 8th grade in Rockwood.
And where is Rockwood, Jack?
It's about 11 miles north of Monroe, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
They call us downriver rats.
Yes.
Yeah, our place was right on the Huron River.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
And what did your parents do?
My dad was a metal finisher for Ford Motor Company. He worked at Flat Rock Ford plant,
Mm-hmm.
the River Rouge plant during the war,
Yes.
working on R-2800 engines for aircraft. And then they transferred him down to Monroe. He worked in that plant.
And Eileen, a little bit about you before you went to grade school.
Before I went to grade school, well, where do I start? Before I went to grade school.
Yeah, that's where.
That would be the grade, and we see, you don't want before kindergarten, no.
Yeah.
Well, I was born in Interlaken. My mother passed away when I was 6 years old.
Okay.
She died of anemia, which today is very curable. And I had a brother. He was 5 years older than myself, and my father. So a wonderful aunt and uncle from Trenton took me. They were going to keep me for a while until things were adjusted in my father's life.
And what did your father do?
My father was with the M&E Railroad.
He was the section supervisor.
Yeah,
Okay.
M&E Railroad.
M&E?
M-N-E.
M-
M-N-E.
Oh, okay.
Manistee North,
What, Easter?
Northeastern,
Uh-huh.
I think it was.
And so you quite early moved down to
I
the
moved
Detroit
to Trenton
area.
with this aunt and uncle, and my brother stayed with my father. Then they had moved on. My father was transferred to Onikama
Mm-hmm.
and then to Norwalk, and then my brother went to live with my grandmother and grandfather, and went to high school in Mesik.
Okay.
Mystic, Michigan.
Well, Jack, as you started grade school, tell us a little bit about what you did.
I don't really remember back that far.
Okay, well,
Uh,
that's okay.
It was a very small school. And in fact, after I finished the 8th grade, my parents moved me to school in Trenton, which was a much bigger high school.
Okay.
There were only 3 graduates, I think, in the Rockwood senior class. So,
That was a pretty small school,
Yeah.
wasn't
so that's where I spent my high school.
it? In Trenton, you said?
Yeah.
And that's where you were at?
Yeah, that's where,
Is that where you met Jack?
yeah, well, I met him
Not for a while.
not for a while.
Okay.
She was there through kindergarten. I didn't come till the 8th grade, or
Yeah.
9th grade. And then, let's see, we went to high school starting in, 38?
Great, yeah,
Mhm.
That's when we met.
in 38.
So you met in 1938.
Yep. And we graduated from school in 41, June of 41.
Okay. Tell me, Jack, where the two of you were at when Pearl Harbor happened.
I was working at a shop called Lincoln Park Tool and Gauge.
Okay.
I was 16 at the time, and I was working 70 hours a week
Wow.
on war jobs. We made a lot of fancy gauges.
Mm-hmm. And where
So-
were you, Eileen?
I was in the Trenton Theater for the matinee when all of a sudden the manager of the theater, the lights went on, and he said, "Well, all Navy personnel, please return to Roselle.
Really?
Pearl Harbor has been invaded by the Japanese." So that's where I was
Wow.
that day.
That was kind of scary, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Went home and my mother and dad, everybody just was all upset, yeah.
So you quit school, go to work, Jack?
No, I graduated at 16.
Really?
Yeah, I started, I guess you'd say kindergarten. I think I was like 4 and a half. I kept running away from home to go to school.
Yeah.
So was you
No,
childhood
that's different.
sweethearts in school?
No, no,
Not really.
not really. Back in those days, we went as a group,
Sure.
you know, the girls
Mm-hmm.
and the boys. Of course, I knew Jack, and at the time, he was going with another girl. And,
As
don't
part of the group.
a part of the group. I don't think I had a boy.
You had to add that, didn't you, Jack?
Oh, yeah, stay
Yeah,
out
it
of
was
trouble.
part of a group, and then, we didn't single any, we just went we'd go to a show, groups, and then
Mhm.
we'd go to Petrie's to have ice cream after as a group.
So was you in the same grades?
Yeah.
Yes, we graduated
You graduated together
at,
then?
at high school.
Did you go to the prom together?
No.
No?
No, I went with Malcolm Elias to the prom, you went with Alma.
Yeah. And our senior
See, she
prom,
remembers that.
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Our senior prom, I was in the hospital. I had a slight accident,
Oh,
so I kind of disappointed my date.
Uh-oh.
I always felt kind of bad about that.
so tell us about that.
About the
Oh,
accident.
yeah, sure.
Well, we had I guess you'd call it an athletic dinner in the senior year. And from all sports, we had a dinner together.
Mm-hmm.
And on the way home from that, someone went through a stop street and clobbered me pretty good.
Oh,
Oh,
boy.
so you was in the hospital?
Yeah. But, about 5 days, I guess. And it's very interesting when you wake up in a hospital and there's a state policeman sitting at the end of your bed,
Ooh.
you know. He was there because the guy that hit me died in the accident. And they wanted to make sure that I wasn't at fault for anything. So, very interesting. Kind of shocking, too.
Yeah. What did he say when you woke up?
Well, he just identified himself and told me why he was there. There wasn't much I could do about it.
Did you remember any of the accident?
Very little. I remember riding in the ambulance to the hospital. The guy that was driving it was also a classmate of mine, and he never recognized me. I would guess I was kind of bloody and so
Yeah.
forth, so
Oh, boy.
that I remember. And then I don't remember getting in the hospital or anything else for
Mhm.
a day or so.
So let's go back to the day that happened in Pearl Harbor. And Jack, you said you were working as in a tool and die shop at the time?
Yep.
And as a trainee or a tool and die maker, or?
Well, they called us at that time precision gauge finishers.
Yes?
We had various kinds of plug gauges and ring gauges and measuring type devices.
Mhm.
And I was a lap hand.
Okay, I understand what you mean.
Yep.
Maybe other people won't, so tell us what a lap hand is.
Well, in a manufacture of these so-called plug gauges and ring gauges, first of all, they go through an operation where they're turned on pretty close to the finish size on a lathe or a mill or something. And then they came to us and we brought them down to the final dimension, which was in some cases 5 to 10 millionths of an inch. And we used what we call laps with carborundum on it. Just massage these things
Until you got them to the right size.
Yeah, and we used comparators where we set up a buildup of Johansen blocks
Yeah.
for the size we needed, and then compared that with what we were working with. That was a good job.
Yes. And Jack, you then, obviously at that time, or soon after that, you was in the reserves.
Well, I guess I confused both of us with that term reserves. They didn't call it really reserves at that time.
Okay.
It was regular Army. But as I say, I was not a regular Army person. I didn't figure on staying in for
I see.
40 years or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, were you drafted or did you?
Well, I tried to get in the Air Force. I wanted to be
Okay.
a pilot, big shot. But I failed the physical because my depth perception was bad. I couldn't line up the sticks right.
Uh-huh.
So after that, I said, well, I don't want to go any particular place, so come and get me when you want me. They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in school at that time. I started school and,
Started college?
yeah, I was at the University of Michigan, let's see, 42, and they drafted me in 43.
All right.
So I had about a year there. Yep.
What did you go to school for?
I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer.
Oh.
Didn't get very far.
They suggested that you go to the Army.
Mhm.
So tell us how that came about.
Well, after my friends and neighbors notified me they wanted me, I had my physical in Detroit. And after about a month, they called me to come in. And I was inducted in Detroit. And then they shipped me to Fort Custer. I was there about a week. And then they did what they called bingoed. They sent a group of us on a train somewhere. They didn't tell us where we were going. We all think, boy, now we're in the Air Force, we're gonna be ground workers, you know. Figured we'd go into Chinook Field. But the train kept going and going and going. And we wound up in Grenada, Mississippi.
Oh, my.
We didn't laugh very much. It turns out that we were members of the 167th Combat Engineering Battalion. So we got off the train and we walked to the so-called base, which was Camp McCain, Mississippi. And we basically built our own camp. We built all of our barracks and all that stuff.
Really?
And it was, I don't know if you know Mississippi, but it's a pretty dry and barren spot, especially in those days.
Quite hot, too.
Yeah, and it could rain a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one of the first things I noticed were these drainage ditches along the roads. They were about 6 foot deep.
No water.
No, not then. A lot of dust, but no water. And then it started to rain and those ditches filled up. And when we were on the drill field, occasionally, we'd be walking in mud and getting dust in our eyes.
Yeah,
Very
I've
strange.
heard that story.
Yeah,
That's interesting. They do that in Texas too.
oh yeah.
Walk in
there's-
mud, get dust in your eyes.
That's more sand. We had blue clay, really,
Oh my.
which made it very difficult to dig foxholes and stuff.
It also made it very difficult to walk in.
Well, yeah, when it was raining, it was. Other than that, it wasn't too bad.
Well, Jack, tell us a little bit about your early training then.
Well, as I said, we were in the combat engineers, so they had to teach us how to build bridges, both over water and
Mhm.
over canyons and stuff. We had a lot of very good equipment. We had one piece of equipment, which was an air compressor truck. And on that truck, the tools were chainsaws, circular saws, drills, and a whole shot. So we'd pull up into the woods someplace with this truck, and then we'd build a bridge. We'd cut trees down and cut them into all this kinds of lumber, and then put the bridge up. It was, I liked it, it was interesting.
So you started right from scratch in a sense and built a bridge.
Right. We also did the same essentially on the Yazoo River, which ran through there. We put up ponton bridges, put up pontons, and then built the Bailey bridges on top of those pontons.
Okay.
Very interesting.
I bet it was.
It got to be pretty hard work. Yeah. But I finished basic with that outfit, and then they gave me 3 choices. I could either go out on cadre as a first sergeant for a new battalion, or I could go to OCS, or I could go to ASTP. And ASTP at that time was a training program for engineering students. So obviously I wanted to be an engineer, so
Sure.
I picked ASTP. And
What did the initials stand for at
Army
ASTP?
Specialized Training Program.
Okay.
And it had a patch was the Lamp of Knowledge. Very, very interesting, but I was.
So you went to the engineering school.
Yeah, and that was in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
And it was quite a dream, because we were there about, I guess, 3 months. And then all of a sudden, the Army decided they need a lot of infantry replacements.
Oops.
So they washed the program out
Oh,
and shipped everybody out. Now, one of the problems with going to ASTP, if you had any rank, you had to give that up and go in as a private. So I had a lot of rank, I was a corporal. But
Major rank, huh?
yeah, we had to give that up. And when they shipped us out, they shipped most of us from my group down to Louisiana near Camp Polk. But it was in the wintertime, it was February, and the outfit was on maneuvers. So everybody was out in the snow and the mud, and here we were with our Oxford shoes and all that kind of stuff, you know. Didn't have any field gear. And the first thing he did was introduce us to our foxhole. And man, that was miserable. But we got through that.
So they taught you how to dig a foxhole and stay in it. Did you have to stay in it overnight?
Oh, yeah. And that was probably one of the times when I was the hungriest in my life. We went 3 days without food,
Really?
any food. It was part of a problem, and our group was cut off, surrounded. We couldn't get any supplies, so 3 days without food.
I need to do that.
At the end of 3 days, there was a problem.
Yeah, they decided to be good to us, so they brought out what they called rations. And that's the first time we ever saw the C ration.
Oh, my,
You've probably heard of those.
yes.
And some of us were not too intelligent, so we just put the T rations in a fire. You know what happened then, the cans blew up. But then we got smart, and we punched holes in the top, warmed them. They tasted pretty good then.
I bet after 3 days, they tasted real good.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
everything.
Did you ever come across Spam?
Yes. In fact, overseas, Spam got to be a pretty tasty dish because we primarily lived on C rations and K rations, which after a couple of 3-4 weeks, they get pretty old. And Spam was not too bad.
Yeah, we've talked to some people that they can't even look at a can of Spam, even
I haven't
today.
bought any since I got out of service, I'll tell you.
No, I never buy a can, I've never bought a can of Spam.
Well, during this period of time, Irene, what was you doing?
Well, after graduation from Trenton High, I wasn't old enough. I wanted to be a nurse, but I wasn't old enough. Had to be, in those days, 18 years old to go into nursing. So I was only 17 and I graduated. So I went to work to earn some money to go on. I worked at Owen's drugstore.
Okay,
Owen's Pharmacy, I think I made $3 and something a week.
a week.
Mhm.
And I saved about $2 of that. I'd go to the bank, put it in the People's Bank at Trenton. That was my money when I went away to school. Well, after a year of that, I was accepted at Hurley Hospital in Flint. But in the meantime, they had started the United States Nurse Corps,
Yes,
which I was in the first class to go to Wayne State. And we went there for several hospitals within the area, girls from representing different hospitals, like Butterworth and all the different hospitals in Michigan. We're going to go there and have their basics. That would be anatomy, physiology, chemistry, and biology at
Okay.
Wayne State.
Now, did you have to pay for your way there, or did
No, this was the United States Cadet Nurse Corps.
they? Okay, so they paid all your
This was the government.
Yep.
Because they needed
nurses.
Nurses.
need nurses.
So I went there. I went to Hurley Hospital for 3 years, and I graduated in June of 1945. Yeah, and then I went to work at Wyandotte General. I
So,
worked-
what happened with the United States,
the girls that were coming in
yeah,
at that time were still
mm-hmm,
with him. We actually didn't get any money in our hands, like they would buy our shoes.
okay,
They bought their shoes, and they bought the cheapest ones, I think, because my feet were absolutely a mess. I got through 3 years of walking on terrazzo floors, and the shoes were not
very good.
the best.
Yes.
They were Lady Douglas. I'll never forget that. Then when I did graduate from there, I got myself a pair of cantilevers
I bet.
shoes. They were good shoes. But in the meantime, after I graduated from training, I had to have my feet operated, my toe operated on, so I was laid up at home in Trenton for a while.
So what happened to your, time in service?
I didn't go into service.
They just trained you and you,
I didn't go into service.
Right.
I had signed in the meantime, but
Mhm.
then the war ended.
Okay, okay.
I had signed up, but the war,
so you got trained, but you, by the
war
time your
ended.
training was over,
yeah.
why, the
we
war
didn't
was
have-
ended.
The war
Yeah.
was,
So you got a free education?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
practically, I had to buy, my cape and, uniforms. I had to buy those. That's what I worked at the drugstore for.
Oh, okay.
To make that money. Cause back then you wore
Yes.
uniforms and white shoes and white socks
And a cape.
and white caps, yeah. So where was I? Where am I at now? I got to,
Well, you got to the end of 1945 and
that's
was
when I graduated.
graduating.
And when I was laid up, Jack came home on convalescent furlough from Germany.
Okay,
So how did I run into you someplace?
Your girlfriend Frances had me call you.
Yeah, Frances Rothstarn. Frances Cloak Rothstarn. But she saw you
I guess, yeah.
and you said, is there anybody from our class around? And Fran says, yeah, Eileen is. Eileen's home. She's laid up with a bad foot, but you called me and we went out.
Yeah, I was still in my uniform, of course, with
Oh,
my
yeah, and real.
combat boots on and.
all right.
Oh, yeah.
And we went dancing.
Aha,
So we got together. That's when we first got together.
even bad feet you danced, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Even with a bad toe and everything.
I don't think the combat boots helped her feet much.
So that,
So that kind of brings you up to date there. Well,
that
Jack,
brings us up to date there.
Jack, as you
'cause we went
as you
together.
were trained and so on, and building bridges, where did you go then?
That's when I switched to ASTP
Yes,
and went to school.
yes.
And then they washed that out and they shipped us to the infantry.
And where did you go with the infantry?
Well, they shipped us to, as I told you, Camp Polk, which was not a fort yet. It was one of these temporary
Mhm.
deals. And I was assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 114th Infantry in 44th Division. And we stayed in Polk for about 3 weeks until those maneuvers were over. And then they shipped us to Camp Phillips, Kansas. And all this time that I was with them, they were training me to be a mortar gunner.
Okay,
We did a lot of that in Kansas. And very interesting. We would be out on the mortar range firing our mortars, and these big airplanes would be going over. They
Huh.
turned out to be B-29s. They were,
yeah, they were big at that time, weren't they?
Yeah. And that was at, I think they called it the Smoky Hill Air Base in Salina,
Yes.
Kansas. So we'd watch our projectiles go over the airplanes
Uh-huh.
because they were coming in to land. And we never hit any, but we were close.
Wouldn't want to be those pilots.
Well, they ducked heavier stuff than that later on. Yeah. So we were there for, oh goodness, maybe 2 or 3 months. During that time, D-Day occurred.
Okay,
So we were packed up and getting ready to ship out. But we were, of course, we missed D-Day. We didn't come on until about 2 months later. They shipped us to Boston, to Camp Miles Standish, to
Okay.
wait for the transports. And then, well, after we got on the transports, went across, they were still having trouble with U-boats. And I remember I could lay in my bunk down on D-deck or something, put my hand out on the side of the ship and feel it tremble when they were dropping depth charges. And as I say, I was down in D-deck. It was a long way down.
Mm.
But anyway, it took us about, I think, 7 days to cross. Now, we were the first troops to land directly in France. We landed at Cherbourg,
Okay.
and we went from there to various places in France.
Do you remember the name of the ship that you went over on?
Boy, I tried to remember last night. I think it was a general, but I couldn't understand that because they told us it was a Navy transport ship.
Oh,
And I couldn't see the Navy naming a ship a general.
no.
But anyway, it was that type of ship.
Oh, okay.
It was
So
Navy.
as you landed in France, where did you go?
After we landed at Cherbourg,
Yes.
we went first of all to a little town called Saint-Germain-de-Tournebou, which was,
Okay.
I don't really know where it was. It's probably about 50 miles from Cherbourg, going into
Mhm.
France. And we stayed there, golly, about a month, till they were getting straightened out as to where they wanted us and so forth. So they finally shipped the division to the 7th Army in the southern part of France, around Nancy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we spent quite a bit of our time. We withstood 2 attacks down there. One of them was on Thanksgiving Day. They hit my battalion with 22 Panther tanks and about 2 regiments of infantry.
Oh, my.
So we held them off, and with the help of a tank destroyer outfit, they took care of the tanks. They, very smart men. We were kind of situated in a railroad embankment. So these tank destroyers would stay down in the hole, in the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, they'd pop up and they'd fire their 90 and get themselves a German tank and then go back down again. So they got about, I think it was 7 tanks.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a good outfit.
Well, that was a real good tank, that Panther tank was.
Yeah,
And
but it couldn't withstand that 90 millimeter on that TD. The Sherman tanks with their 75 didn't do very well.
but the 90 millimeter was a pretty heavy
Yeah,
shot,
right.
and that would take out a Panther.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long did that particular siege last?
Oh, it was only about a little less than a whole day.
Okay.
They came in early in the morning and we drove them back late in the afternoon.
So they turned around and went back with
Yeah,
the tanks they had left.
yeah, the tanks and the infantry they had left, because we hurt them pretty bad.
Okay. And then what went on after that?
Let's see. Well, as I say, we stayed in that general area, the Nancy area, and then we finally got to Cherbourg.
Okay.
And that was getting kind of hairy then, because Eisenhower wanted to pull us out of that area,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess it was de Gaulle decided, no, he couldn't do that, we had to defend it. Because if we pulled out, the Germans would kind of
Would have overrun it,
annihilate
yes.
the town, so we stayed there. In fact, we were quartered in a insane asylum.
Oh,
But
okay.
Hey, it's not bad, it's dry,
Right.
out of the rain. And I happened to run into my old outfit, that 167th Battalion. They were,
The engineers.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were repairing a destroyed railroad bridge there, so our guys could get on it. It was interesting. I met about 4 or 5 of the guys I took my basic with. And they'd had some pretty hairy experiences, I'll tell you.
I bet.
They bridged the Moselle for Patton when he went over, and they lost quite a few men there. Yeah.
So I bet you, as you talked to those guys, you thought, well, it's a good thing I got pushed out of there.
Well, there's about 6 of one, half dozen of
Yeah.
the other, you know. We didn't have it too easy either.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, so as you talked to the fellas from your old division, what did they tell you? Just-
Well, they said they had it pretty rough when they crossed the Moselle. In fact, one of the squad leaders I knew pretty well was hit in the head with a 40 millimeter mortar shell while they were doing that.
Mhm.
Of course, he was no longer there.
He was gone, wasn't he?
Yep.
And after staying there and protecting the area for De Gaulle, where did you go?
Well, about that time, the bulge hit,
Yeah.
and Patton pulled most of his people out and to go north, and we were south, so they moved us a little bit north to cover Patton's flank. And we didn't have it too bad. On, I think it was New Year's Eve, the Germans hit us with what they called the north wind attack, trying to pull some of the people from the actual bulge
Yes.
away down there. So we had a little scramble that night. We fired 2,400 rounds out of my 81 millimeter mortar.
Wow.
So that mortar got pretty
I
warm.
was gonna say, that got hot, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I burned out a BAR firing that. Oh, it was interesting.
So you were on the one side of the Battle of the Bulge. You weren't really
No, I wasn't.
you weren't really in the bulge.
No,
You were just supporting it.
that's right. Call it the flag.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. We were pretty thin down that way, I'll tell you.
I bet, because that was a final battle that Hitler tried to get through and didn't make it. Thank goodness.
Well, and that's another reason why he tried his northwind attack.
Yeah.
He'd say, well, I didn't make it up here, we'll try it south. That didn't work either. That lasted about maybe 4 or 5 days.
Yes, I've interviewed a couple of fellows that was actually in the bulge.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one.
It was quite a battle. So the flank wasn't hit too hard.
No, not compared to the bulge.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So as that was over, where did you go from there?
We went through quite a bit of France. I can't remember any specific names, but
Okay, well, you don't have to have the names.
then we went into Germany.
Mhm.
I remember in particular Ulm, Germany, and we'd captured a manufacturing plant that had made German motorcycles,
Okay,
and they had a stack of motorcycles there that was probably 30 feet high and about 100 feet long. All
Really?
brand new motorcycles.
just stacked up.
Yeah. So obviously we couldn't leave them there, so
No.
we burned them.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah,
Beautiful BMW.
you didn't get any? Oh,
Oh, we rode a couple, but we couldn't take any with us.
They burned?
Well, you didn't dare leave them there in case the Germans came back.
yeah, that's true.
They wiped them out. And then we went on into some other smaller towns in Germany. We went to Nuremberg,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a part in releasing that prisoner of war, well, not a prisoner of war camp, it was a
Concentration camp.
concentration camp,
Yeah.
yeah, Dachau.
Dachau.
Yeah.
Did you get to go inside of Dachau at all?
Yes, I did.
That was a real
I wish I hadn't,
real mess, wasn't it?
yeah.
What was your impression of the people were still there, weren't they?
You mean the civilians in the area?
Yes.
No, the prisoners.
Oh, there were some left, yes.
Some left in the
What was
concentration.
left of them, yeah,
Yeah, they weren't very healthy.
no, they were very
Mm.
bad. And the civilians around the area claimed they didn't know what was going on up there. So, I don't know who the general was, but he took a lot of these civilians and made them dig some mass graves, and they buried all these people.
Hmm.
Yeah, Dachau was a very bad
Yeah.
situation. In fact, again, I've interviewed fellows that were there,
Yeah.
and it was not pleasant. I have pictures of one fellow that had
Oh, yeah.
pictures of Dachau in it, and the ovens and things that were there.
Yeah, it's not something you like to remember.
No, it isn't.
Kind of give you nightmares for a while, didn't it?
Well, yeah, it kinda made you mad too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know
Did you
s-
come in contact with any of the people around there? You know, the civilians?
Well, that's like I say, I don't know who the general was, but I don't know if it was Patch or not, but they rounded up quite a few of those civilians and made them dig mass graves.
Then what happened to the civilians? They just went back home?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, some of the civilians, as I understand it, committed suicide afterward, but
Mhm.
I didn't see that.
Hmm.
Yeah, we wound up at Bad Orb, Germany, I believe the name was, which was a POW camp, and we broke those fellows out. That was a sorry sight too.
It was.
Yeah, they were half-starved or more than half-starved. We gave them everything we had in the way of rations, sea rations again,
Sure.
and cigarettes and stuff like that. And man, they really appreciated it. Yeah.
So, in that POW camp, was it, was Americans or English or
It was a mixture.
mixture?
Yeah. It was not an officer's camp, it was a,
Was it, was
Enlisted
it
man's
an
camp.
enlisted man's camp?
yeah. Yeah.
Some of the POW camps weren't too bad, some of them were really bad.
Well, I had a cousin in the 106th Division that was captured at the Bulge.
Yes?
And they marched him, I think, 50 miles
Yeah,
through the snow and ice, and after they'd taken his boots away from him, so his feet were in bad
I
shape.
bet they were,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, he was not in that camp that I broke loose, or we broke loose.
Mhm.
Some of those were real bad.
So after that experience, where did you go then?
Well, then we turned and went south again. We went through the Black Forest,
Okay,
and we went into Austria. I think the name of the town was Route, Reuttte.
okay,
And then we were on the trail of the Germans that were left that were retreating. And we went all the way to the Brenner Pass in Italy. And then about that time, the war ended. We never did get the Berchtesgaden because not the Air Force, but the paratroops got there before us.
oh, they did?
Yeah. But it got to be hairy there in Austria too. The few Germans that were left had some artillery pieces and they could cover all the roads and passes and stuff.
So it's quite a fight there,
Yeah.
yeah.
Not, not a big one like
Yeah.
the Bulge, but it was a continuous battle for about 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Now, your wife mentioned you came home to recuperate from what?
Germany.
Well,
Recoup-
after the war,
They call it.
you heard about men being sent home, depending on the number of points. they
Yes.
had.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
You should have had a lot of points.
I don't remember how many I had, but they were anxious for troops that they could train for Japan. So
Yes.
they brought a bunch of us back, and where did we come to?
They were-
We came off the ship, we came back on a Queen Elizabeth,
Queen Elizabeth.
a lovely trip.
Ah.
And we landed at, I think it was New Jersey, and they shipped us to Fort Dix. And there, we were there about 3 days. They fattened us up with good milk, good food. German prisoner of wars did all the waitressing and cleaning up and
Yeah.
everything. We just sat there and ate. You could get 2 quarts of milk at a time if you wanted. We ate pretty well. And then they shipped us home on what they called an R&R, recuperation and rest and recuperation.
Mhm.
And I was home about it was supposed to be a 30-day
Mhm.
leave. I was home about 3 weeks, and I got a telegram calling me back. So they called me back. Fort Smith, Arkansas. What was the name of that camp?
Fort Smith? I don't remember.
I remember Camp McCain, but I can't remember the one at Fort Smith.
Fort Smith, I don't.
Anyway, we were there for a while, and they were kind of disassembling the Army at that time. So some of the guys were sent for discharge, some were sent to Texas. I was lucky, they picked me for discharge. They sent me to Camp Gruber, Oklahoma. And I was discharged there on the 17th of November in 1945.
Okay. So you never got to do the training to go over to Japan?
No, I was on the list to go to Fort Benning. They were gonna train me as a recoilless rifleman,
Okay.
so I never made it, thank goodness.
Well, that was, by that time, probably the atom bomb had been dropped. You remember that? Remember that day?
Not quite then, I remember that day. In fact,
Or was you out of the service then?
no,
Yeah.
we had already been picked and given an assignment for the seat on the assault boat that was gonna hit the beach.
Okay.
That's another thing I missed.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. So that's about up my service time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So now, you got back home and you called this lady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it went to pieces from there.
Yeah. That's a nice thing to say.
Yeah, she was working in, I think, afternoons. Yeah.
Midnights, doesn't
No, you're working afternoons. and
Afternoons,
I'd
yeah.
pick you up
Yeah.
at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
we'd go out.
And these nurses were pretty sharp, weren't they?
Yep. Yep.
So
Oh,
how long did
Nice
you,
looking, pretty uniforms and all that.
Yep.
how long did you go together before you got married?
2 years, wasn't
Well, I
it?
worked.
45,
I worked 45 and 46.
and we were married in 47.
I went to school starting in the fall of 46, and we were married in 47.
We were married in 47.
So
And
you
then-
did end up going to school?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I went
Lawrence Technological
All right.
University.
but I worked a year first.
Mhm.
And then I went back under the GI Bill.
GI Bill, then I worked those 3 years. I worked at Chrysler Corporation.
So you left the hospital and worked
Yeah.
in a,
Chrysler Corporation. That, in those days, they had visiting nursing.
okay,
We would go out after an employee
was hurt.
was absent
Yeah.
for a few days. We'd go out and write them up and take the reports back. And then our first, Jack graduated 1950.
In June
In
of 50.
June, and our first daughter was born in July
Okay,
of 1950.
That's what you call scheduling.
yes.
She's now 50, of course, 57.
And what was her name?
Christine
Okay,
Allen was her name.
She was born in Highland Park.
Highland Park. We were living there at the time because Lawrence Tech was located.
in Highland Park.
Yeah, the old Ford
Okay.
building there, before they built the new one out
Mm-hmm.
in Southfield. So we lived in that upper room apartment, upper floor apartment. We had to, with a youngster, we had to get a home. So we looked around and ended up buying a small place in Allen Park
Okay.
under the GI Bill, 4%.
Mm-hmm.
4% interest.
Pretty nice, huh?
Oh, yeah. And how many years did, and then
14 years there.
And then 6 years later, we had another girl. That is Suzette. Suzette Cherry.
Oh,
Jack
my.
named that one. I says, you must have liked, yeah, that's definitely a French name. Then how long did we live in Allen Park?
14 years.
14 years. And then after the 14 years, we moved to South Rockwood.
We had a house built, my folks gave us the land, and we had a house built in South Rockwood.
And so you, what did you do after you graduated from school there?
That was a tough time in 1950, if you
Yes.
don't remember. Jobs were not readily available. So I worked
Jan.
for an outfit called J.N. Favre and Company, and they produced centralized lubrication devices.
I know it well,
Oh, you do?
yes.
Yeah, I did the installation of their
Oh,
centralized lubrication.
Okay,
grease so,
Grease all over, huh?
yep,
I can still see that grease.
Yeah. Some of those shops, I weighed in over my shoe tops and grease,
yeah,
get that
Oh,
stuff on. But I didn't, they had kind of indirectly promised me a service manager's job.
okay,
So I worked there about 4 months, I think. There was no service manager's job. So I applied to an employment agency, and they got me into a place called Holly Carburetor.
mhm,
And I worked in their aircraft division as a serviceman. And I traveled quite a bit to various bases to instruct the service people how to maintain and repair our fuel controls for jet engines. Now, I'd be gone from home for like 6 weeks at a time.
Oh, my.
oh, yeah, that was
And
bad.
I did cover the country though, from
Mm-hmm.
California to North Carolina to Tennessee,
so how long did you work for Holly Carburetor?
about 3.5 years.
Okay,
And then I had an offer to come to Ford Motor Company to work, and I left Holly. And the Ford Motor job was working in the Mercury Aircraft Division. They were gonna build J-40 jet engines. So they built a large plant out in Romulus, Michigan.
mm-hmm,
And I was out there as kind of a liaison man between the contractors and the engineering department. And that lasted for about a year. And then, I don't know if it was the Navy or the Air Force decided they didn't want any more J-40 engines, so they just canceled the contract.
right,
So I got transferred to Ford Motor Steel Division. And I worked in the, it was kind of an engineering office because we did things like do the cost work and the plans for relining blast furnaces.
okay,
We built a passageway for visitors over the open hearth mills and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So it was interesting.
yeah,
Then I couldn't see any advancement there, so I went back to Holly for about a year. And then I got another chance to go to Ford in the truck division, so that's where I went. And I spent 25 and a half
Yeah.
years there.
Oh, wow.
At the truck.
Yeah,
So, did you continue your nursing?
No, back then, we stayed home and raised the children.
Uh-huh.
and that was a good job,
Drove them to school, and they were in orchestra and band and all of that.
So you had 2 daughters?
Two daughters.
Yeah, and with me gone 6 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
that she was taking care of
she
the
had
house,
load, yeah.
you bet,
So then, no, because the oldest was about 6 years old when Suzette was born. Because she'd started school in Allen Park.
so you were what they call a stay-at-home mom
Yeah,
now.
back then, they were stay-home
You bet,
moms. If we needed the car, we'd get up early in the morning, haul the kids out, and wherever the driver you were gonna ride with, I'd take you there. Come home and, in the winter time, it was terrible. But we were lucky we could afford one car,
Yeah,
yes,
let alone 2.
Yes.
well, Jack,
those were
where
good
did
days.
you
Oh,
join
yes.
the Masons?
Since,
In 1946, a year after I got out of service, we had a class of 13,
Uh-huh,
and all of us were ex-GIs.
really?
And I've been a Mason for 62 years now.
Yes.
And then after I graduated from Tech in 40 and 50, my grandmother gave me the necessary money to take care of my shrine application and dues,
Okay,
and I joined the shrine then.
and you and your dad went in at the
Yeah,
same
my
time.
dad and I went at the same time.
So-
32nd and the shrine,
so you went into the Scottish Rite?
Yeah.
And the shrine.
right.
Were you active in the shrine?
Yeah, I spent 34 years with the Oriental Band.
Oh, really?
Oh, my.
34 years.
Yeah.
Wow,
Hmm.
Now
had the
did-
pointy shoes and everything,
Oh,
huh?
yeah,
Did you join the Stars?
we both
But we
did.
didn't have time for stars. My mother was a past matron of Trenton,
Oh, wow.
and Jack's mother was a past matron of Flat Rock. So with Jack running, he was quite active. in
Sounds
the
like it.
Oriental band.
yeah.
Then after, well, you didn't tell him, after how many years you decided to go back to college?
Oh, again?
6 years,
Yeah,
night school,
I was working back at Ford's then,
yeah.
and I decided I needed to know more about production work.
So you went to night
So I
school.
went to night school and picked up another degree in industrial engineering.
It was 6 years.
So that, I got that in 63, I think.
So I practically raised
Yes, yes.
the children myself while he,
Yeah, I'd go to work, I'd leave home at about 5:30 in the morning, drive all the way out to, what was it, Hoover Road and
Yeah.
Van Dyke, way out on the east side of Detroit. And then when I was over through work at about 5 o'clock, and I'd drive from there to Lawrence Tech, which was way over on the west side, and
Oh,
get
those
through
were the
there about
days.
11 o'clock at night and then drive home.
And you still had time for masonry
Oh, yeah,
and the shrine and all that? Yes.
not
So
as
you
much
kept-
as I wanted to
You
have.
kept pretty busy, didn't you?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. That's probably why you only had 2 kids.
that's right. I took care of them. No. But good thing we were able to
You bet.
stay home in those days, and we went without.
Yep.
How many years before we had a new refrigerator? 14 years we lived in that house.
Oh,
So
look
when
at
did you move up to Traverse City then?
10 years ago,
We lived in South Rockwood for
36.
35 years.
Mhm.
And then our children, our daughters are both in Traverse City. And they said, you know, Mom and Dad, we've got to work up here. She says, why don't you and Dad just sort of think of moving up into Traverse? And then we'd all be together. Well, if you can imagine, that was a job to move
Oh,
all our stuff from our house. We had the movers.
Yeah, I retired in
Yeah.
1980, and
Okay.
I think we moved up in 97, was it?
He retired early. He was the first group. They offered an early retirement at Ford Motor. And I
Good.
said to him, why not take it? Let's gamble.
heck yes.
No social security, but he says,
Well,
We-
the company
they did pretty good
gave
by
you a
us.
supplement
Yeah.
Pretty good
until you
by
made
us,
it
so
to 62.
we
Yep.
made it.
Well, the way it's going now.
So then
it's
you
good.
moved up to Traverse
10
City.
years
Yeah.
ago, we moved up to Traverse City.
What did you do up there, Jack, besides
Very
Have-
little.
have fun in the
Very
in
little.
the shrine,
The
huh?
first thing that was done before the house, wasn't it, a workshop?
Yeah,
We had a workshop built on our property there.
Ah, that's a
And,
good idea.
He moved all these tools and everything up. Remember, that was the first.
yeah. The house in South Rockwood had 14 acres, and about 10 of those acres was in grass, lawn.
Mhm.
So I spent a lot of weekends cutting the grass.
I bet you did.
And then we planted 500 pines in one section of it
Oh, they
to took care of those.
Oh,
Took care of
They
took
were
care of mowing the
beautiful.
lawn,
Oh, how
didn't it?
we hated to
Well-
leave those
I
pine trees.
bet.
So when did you come to the Masonic Pathways?
Eileen came on the 29th of January 2007,
Okay,
and she went into rehab.
I've been through the 2 rehab steps
hmm
to the 3rd step now.
but you had a stroke or,
And no, I fell.
I see,
I fell on my back twice. And
Balance problem.
my
Yeah.
balance
They don't live here.
all out. But so Jack
Oh.
came up to be with me. How many
Yeah.
weeks ago did you
I
come?
moved up on the 2nd of April.
2nd of
Okay.
April, he rented one of the rooms and moved up. And so I couldn't leave rehab.
okay,
I could see him now and then, but then I finally got a chance to leave rehab and I could stay with him. So I've been with you for about 7 days.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you got a 3rd honeymoon,
Yeah.
all
So
right.
I was with him, they put another twin bed in their room,
Mhm.
and I was with him for, well, it's been about 7 days, and I'm going back to Traverse City.
Yeah.
That's my goal for next month,
How about you, Jack, you gonna move back there too?
Oh, yeah.
the 15th. I don't
She
know,
I go where she goes.
I don't know if we ever have to, we would come back
Mhm.
here.
It's a beautiful place.
Because we had talked about it years ago.
Mhm.
Jack said, I want to go